Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Chasing Easy, where easy and best are seldom on the same path. And that's a quote by Alan Arnold, who is an author. Chasing Easy, this podcast is where we have ordinary, everyday people talking about overcoming hardships through authentic and unscripted conversations. And the goal really is to spread hope in the face of adversity and to realize that you're not alone. So today I have the pleasure of a very special guest whom I've known for years, really through business first, and then just became friends through a myriad of different things. And she's actually a lot of fun. But anyway, so I would like to welcome Michele Langhauser to the podcast. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
It's an honor
And
to be with you.
I tell you, we had a couple of conversations and I thought you would be somebody that could really speak into my audience. Somebody who could inspire that wherever it is that you have come from, that you don't have to stay stuck there. And so out of the 5, and this is where we'll start, and then you can take the script from there, but out of the 5 archetypes, story archetypes, you've got love, which a lot of us are familiar with romantic comedies or rom-coms. You have the Holy Grail. You've got Stranger in a Strange Land. Then you have Rags to Riches, and then Revenge. So out of those 5 stories, where would your life fall?
So love is definitely my mantra for life. Love shows up. I think that stems from hardship as a child, and just some happenings in my life that I really do believe love shows up. And it's kind of how I lead myself in my own daily life. But I would also say Rags to Riches because of that too. So it's kind of, there's 2 in there.
Okay. So as I had guessed, complicated girl, right? No, I'm kidding.
I mean, is there a quiz I could take to kind of narrow this down?
No, I think that where I would like you to start really, because this is what's intriguing, is your Rags to Riches story.
Okay.
You're thriving today, but it wasn't always like that, was it?
Never. No.
So
I
walk
wasn't
us through that.
I wasn't taught money as a child. I grew up in Baltimore City. My family at the time, my parents did a really good job of we didn't know as children we were poor. There were some things that I learned as I got older, that this is not checking out, and then things like in high school and prom, and you just run from one bad scenario to the next. And I landed myself in a very unhealthy relationship, married that guy, which was a win. And then ultimately fast forward, 15 years and found myself in a divorce situation. I'm not a proponent of divorce. I am super spiritual. Divorce was very hard for me because I made a commitment to God that I was going to stay married to this man. And he was just awful to me. And it was when there was a lot of growing up that I had to do. I was pregnant at 19 or 18 and had a baby at 19. And it was just kind of falling into that pattern that I had been taught since I was a child, that this is how you go through life. There's nothing exciting about it. In my spirit, I believe there was always more. It just wasn't present in my everyday living. So when I fast forward to my divorce, it was when that husband of mine, my ex-husband, when he started killing my soul, I decided I need to leave. And that was
Let me stop you there for a second, because you've said, just in that couple of minutes, you brought up a whole bunch of questions.
Okay.
So the first question that I'm going to ask is and this just really made my ears perk up. You said you grew up poor, but you didn't know you were poor.
Yeah, because I believe that, children, youth, everybody, you're taught environment. There's a saying that I've learned in business that you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang out with the most.
That's right.
And that becomes true, right? Maybe not right away, but certainly over time. And I'm one of 5 children. My dad worked really, really hard, but they were parents that, and all of us parents hide things for from our children, but they didn't fight about it. They didn't broadcast that we were broke. Now there were things that as I got older, I noticed like, oh, that bill collector's coming to the door, or we have a turn off notice from the utility company. What does that mean? So those things were, as a kid, you don't know what that is. I remember one story that I tell all the time. My mom put us on the MTA, mass transit bus system in Baltimore City, and took us to the free health clinic to get our shots for school. And I just thought everybody did that, like,
Yeah.
and I thought going to the firehouse to get a coat for the winter is just what everybody did. It wasn't until I got to high school where I really started noticing other teenagers had a little bit more than me. Their parents were providing more, that I really started to like, honestly, that's where I found my work ethic, because I had to go to work in order to keep up with those children. So yeah, they never really, we learned that Christmas was for little kids because I'm the second born. So there were like kind of rules, but my parents did a really great job of shaping responsibility in me, and teaching me what I did not want to be this when I grow up.
So when you talk about, so you just brought another question up. When you talk about you didn't realize until high school that other kids had more than you did. Did the comparison game come in at that point where I call it compare and despair? Because when we compare, it's not usually to say, oh, I'm better off than they are. It's usually the other way around. They have something that I want. When did your desire to keep up with, let's use modern day terms, the Joneses, when did that desire to keep up with them sink in? Was that also in high school?
So I was taught that. My mom was really great at keeping our house decorated really well, but we lacked the big things like health insurance. So while the walls were decorated really pretty, we didn't have the necessities. So I was taught that, and comparison, even into adulthood, has been a huge, huge issue for me, because I want people to see my success and what I'm doing, and that's prayer for me every day, to kind of put on the shoes of contentment, right, and just make sure that I don't have anything to prove to anybody else. But that did set in where you want to be. I mean, as a teenage girl, I think any adolescent being, I mean, even as adults, we want to be included. We're meant to fit in. Yeah, we just want to be included, and we want to have the same things that everybody else has. But I think as a child, that's a little bit more, we got made fun of a lot. I mean, bullying was never talked about when I was in middle school or high school, but if you didn't have Nikes or something, I mean, you were made fun of. And yeah, so it kind of set in there, but then it stayed with me until I would say, oh gosh, it still shows up. I mean,
of course,
every day it shows up. That can, and it's making, it's imposter, right? Like, I don't want to be an imposter, but I want to, I run a super successful real estate company, and I drive a Chevy. And when I go to some real estate events, sometimes it's like, oh, I don't have a Beamer or or all these other like shiny things that other real estate agents have. And at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I have other things, and that's for me to know. That's not for them to know.
Oh, I like that. And that's powerful, because if you're showing up for other people, then that means that's where your identity is found, and it's always going to fail you.
Yeah.
And I got news for you. The Joneses are broke.
They are.
We try to keep up with the Joneses. It's like going back to your childhood, where the home was all put together and well organized and decorated beautifully, but yet you had to go to the free clinic to get your shots. So you don't know what's going on behind somebody's facade.
And that's very true. And it hurts me because my parents still live that way today. They have not learned
Hmm.
through the course of
Yeah.
all their year, and I think that's something that is passed down. You give that to your children, and then
Yeah.
they either live the same way, or for me, a lot of my fiscal responsibility came from, I did better, but I did really well when I met someone who could lead me in finance.
Sure.
Because I wasn't trying to keep up with the Joneses. I wasn't trying to make things look pretty when they were actually a mess. And a part of my divorce was just like accepting that I am a wreck, right? I think there is a point
Mm.
sometimes where you just have to look it in the face and you have to wear it and say, I am a freaking mess, like a beautiful freaking mess.
Mhm.
And I need to get it together.
Yeah. And that awareness, or what I call self-confrontation, is really hard to come by, because it
Mm,
really takes humility to say, I might look like I'm all put together out here, but what's really going on in the inside is nothing at all what you see on the outside.
yeah.
And I think that that's something that, as you mentioned earlier, everybody really struggles with that. We all struggle with comparison. We all struggle with, if you take your two fingers and put it on your wrist, if you find a pulse, you also struggle with pride.
Yeah.
So it's all of those things, but being aware of that and knowing that there is a way to overcome it, but you have to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that and your
Absolutely.
vulnerability. The other question that came up for me is, you kind of just skimmed right through it. You got married early on, and then 15 years later, you got divorced.
Mhm.
Were there warning signs?
Oh, at the very beginning. At the very
Hmm.
beginning. I met a gentleman that I was head over heels in love with as a teenager.
As a teenager, how old were you?
Gosh,
18?
I was 15 when I first met him, dated him. He cheated on me. We broke up for 2 or 3 years, and then we got back together. So that was the first warning sign.
Okay.
When we got back together, I moved out when I was 15 just because of the stuff going on at home. Um, my best friend's mom ended up taking me in, and then I moved out of her home when I graduated high school and into a scenario, an apartment with this man. And life just started. But it was, the signs were that he was mean, condescending, very controlling. And here I am, maybe a little bit lost in my story, trying to find my way. Comparison is setting in, just trying to keep it up, really just wanting someone to love me.
Yeah.
And what does every young girl think? I can change him.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm just, he loves me so much. He's gonna change. He's gonna change. And I think I worked on that, why I cried.
Mhm.
And then I found myself pregnant. And then what do I do? Now, I started falling into acceptance, and this is just my life. And when you get pregnant, my parents were, what did they do? They got pregnant, they got married. So that's just how it happened.
Yeah. So what's interesting though, and I think that especially I know the audience that's listening, what's interesting is we tend to ignore the warning signs.
Mhm.
And the reason that we ignore them, at least I have found, even in my own life, with having several failed marriages and relationships,
Mhm.
is we want to be loved and accepted so bad that we will accept bad love.
Yes, that's very true. That was a powerful point in your book as well, where, when you read through something like that, it can almost bring up like why. One of my deeper struggles was, why did I accept this when I came out of it? I mean, it took me 15 years of enduring a very abusive relationship, because I wasn't strong enough. And I think being in that marriage, it made me the woman I am today, because I know what kind of love I deserve. It's where I found Christ. There is so much good that two children came out of that marriage. And there was a lot of pain. And in that pain, I had to grow in that. I had left him a couple times and always, went back. And I remember when I left, the last time I left him was, I never said divorce, the word divorce. And I was standing in an airport the day he was just berating me, and I just was on the phone and said I want a divorce. And I came home that night and I just never looked back. And I mean, I left with a suitcase and only one child. to go. The other child stayed with him until we could figure out like what was going on. So, you just have to be willing to part with it all. Like when you ignore those warning signs and you accept the bad love, you just keep digging that hole.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not, eventually, I'm so grateful that I got to hang on to my relationship with my kids, my soul, and the things that kind of kept me a little bit I would say that spark, the fire in me.
Mm-hmm.
But it took a lot out of me. And I think that when you do ignore those things, you just keep digging, and that hole just becomes more and more like you're in the bottom of this cave and you just can't climb out, or you think you can't climb out, because
You think you can't.
You think you can't because it's
Yep.
getting darker and darker, and you're just
Yeah.
in there. You can. It was dark. It was 15
Mm-hmm.
years, and it was time. It was a whole lot of money, debt beyond what I could imagine. I'm a realtor, and I lost my house, and that was painful.
Mm.
It was so
Sure.
painful, and just the humility that came out of that. I will never forget it.
Yeah. That, the story resonates with me, as you well know.
Mhm.
And I think what I want to say to the audience is you've come through the other side of it. You recognized it while you were in it, but the courage piece was missing. But it also says something about us when we stay in something like that. We don't really value ourselves.
Mm-mm.
We don't feel that we are worthy of something different. And I know what mine said to me was, you're never going to find anybody to treat you better than me.
Yeah.
I started to believe that when you're with somebody that's supposed to love you and cherish you and treasure you,
Mm-hmm.
when they start beating you down, you start believing it. I don't care how strong of a woman you are.
Yeah. It's
You
very
start
true.
to believe it, and that becomes your truth, and then you stay in that.
Yep.
The armor, if you could look back now at that 15-year-old that fell in love and then he cheated and then you went back and then you got married. If you could look back now as your elder self, what would you say to her at 15 years old?
It's a really powerful question. I would probably just tell her that she deserves so much more. Because you're taught that, right? You just want to be loved, and you're taught values, and you're taught, and my parents did a really great job of teaching us responsibility and manners. And my dad has been the most amazing example of how to love a woman to my mom. Like, he just cherishes the ground that she walks on. Somewhere though, I missed it. I didn't get that from somewhere. And I just needed, it's almost like I was just trying to control it, where I wanted it to look pretty, but it didn't look pretty. I think anybody in a domestic situation, if you go into their house, there's pictures of them. And this was true of my home at the time. I had pictures on the wall where I was smiling, family photos. And I'm like, there's so much pain in those pictures. And you would never know, just because you're kind of taught those values, people speaking into your life. And life was hard for my family when I was a kid. So I don't know that there was time to teach those values. I can't speak for my parents. It's just a matter of, I know they did the best job that they could from where they came from, and somewhere I wasn't given that. I picked it up along the way, which is why it took me 15 years. But those things that were missing were a part of that 15-year journey of being in that relationship that was bad love, or kind of, this doesn't match this, right? Where you're like, I was taught like, this is what love should look like. It doesn't look like this. And you're just sitting in it. Like, it's, and one thing I have a whole bunch of is hope.
Which is a beautiful
I'm hoping to
thing.
get better. I have a business coach, and she gave me the best advice. It's like, hope is not a strategy. I was like, true. Hope is not a strategy. Right. So
Oh, that's good news right there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Because some of us cling to that and think, yeah, this will get me through. I'm really hoping for this. Well,
I'm hoping.
you
Yeah.
got to take action, dude.
Yeah. I hope it's not going to do it. It is
Got
not.
to take action. So let's talk about something that's really uplifting, because we know that you didn't have the best starts, right? Of what love really looks like.
Mhm.
So now you're, well, let me say one other thing. At 18 and pregnant
Mhm.
and in a bad situation, which you were aware of, you still chose life. And I have to give you kudos for that, because many young women today are not. And it's usually because they're misinformed and they aren't equipped with all of the information.
Mhm.
And so they're making knee-jerk reaction decisions based on convenience. So while I know it wasn't convenient for you, you chose life. And so I just want to really give you kudos for that.
Thank you for that. My cousin had a baby at 15, and I always just admired her. So when I found myself pregnant at 18, I had no one to talk to. So I remember going to, I just graduated from high school, and I remember going to the counselor's office at my Baltimore City high school, but she wasn't in. My English teacher was. And she sat down at a table and she did speak to me and said I had options.
Mm,
And I left that meeting like, my number one strength is responsibility. And I left that meeting like, the only option for me is I made this bed, I need to lie in it. And that child of mine has taught me, he was a part of that strength and the value that I had to pick up along that 15-year journey. He was a part of what made me strong enough to eventually, I mean, he endured some of that domestic stuff as a child, for 14 years of his life. But he made me stronger. He made me want more for him. I didn't want him to see this as the way you treat a woman. I
that's
don't know that he'll
powerful
ever
right
know
there.
that. Yeah.
Michelle, that's powerful, because you did not want him to grow up to be somebody that your parents would have warned you about.
Right.
That's powerful. You're not there now,
Mm-mm.
are you?
No.
So kind of, and she's smiling. I know this is over audio, so you're not going to see this, but she's smiling from ear to ear. So walk us through the darkness. When did the light start shining? Where did that come from?
So I asked for a divorce on September 21st of 2011. So many, many moons ago. No, I'm sorry. Is that right? Yeah. 2011. The light started to come when we were doing the whole split the house and the kids, because we couldn't legally separate because we had children in school. And at that was a really rocky 2 months, just because it's heated, right? And you have to kind of like come back to the house and leave the house, and you're living out of a duffel bag.
Mhm.
He had started to get a bit more controlling, and just locking me in a bedroom, like, if you're not leaving, that sort of thing. Just holding the door shut, super big arguments. So of course I started getting a bit more scared, and I was supposed to move out on December 15th, I remember. And I winded up calling the landlord that I signed a lease. My dad wanted me to move back home. But I told my dad, I've moved back home 3 times. I've left him 3 times, and I cannot move back home with you, because there's this, what did I learn as a youth? Like, this is a bad environment. Like, I'm leaving one bad environment to go, and I can't repeat this pattern, right? This is what I keep doing. So signing that lease in my own name made me responsible, right? Like, I'm going to take this on. It's going to be in my own name. And now I have to live here. And it was a 2-year lease. Like, I was like, I'm going to leave, and there's no turning back. I needed to set boundaries for myself, where if it became easy to come back, he's going to change. How many times have I heard that?
Right.
That I was just like, nope, I signed a lease, got to live here, just to give myself some space. But now I'm a single mom, and I have to go out and figure out my fiscal life. And I was, at the time, I had a full-time job, but I was going to quit my job and go and sell real estate full-time. which is a commission only lifestyle. And that was the worst decision. Everyone thought that was the worst decision I could make at the time.
And wait a
in
minute,
all
was that in December of 2011?
That was probably so I moved out in December. That was probably in like the first quarter of 2022. I'm
Okay.
sorry, 2012.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
in planning, quitting my job and starting a new company, I went and found my now husband, Tim. And
You went and found him?
well, because that's when like in real estate, that's when like all the real estate apps were born. Zillow was a big one. And I am super people oriented, but I am not techie. And
Okay.
he was the guy who was teaching all of the tech in real estate. He knew tech. And if I was going to build a company, I was going to go get somebody that was skilled to do this because that's where the market is going. So we started kind of tossing around the ideas of building a business together. And we would meet, and sometimes at my house, sometimes in his house, and we would whiteboard, and we're going to build this business. And then one day in June, he was like, do you want to have dinner? And I said, like a work date or like a date? And from that our first date was June 15th. It wasn't long that I was in that, like, I'm a single woman kind of person, but yeah, 6 months, we started like, okay, we're a little bit more than business partners at this point. There's definitely feelings there, but he had been divorced. I was divorcing. And it was all cloudy. It was complicated because we had worked in the office together. And once we sorted all of that out, I mean, he is my Prince Charming, and there were things where you have to, I remember when I was 35, I made a list of like the top 35 things I want to do before I die. And it was so important to me because I hadn't done so much in the first part of my life because I was so controlled. And I was not going to live under anybody's thumb ever again. And in falling in love with him, he discovered that, and he makes sure we check one off every year. Like it is
So how much do you have left?
I don't, it's hanging on the board behind me. I probably have, we've been together now married for 7 years. So we probably have still 25 maybe, but every year we take something off of that list. And it's just so beautiful that once you learn the kind of love, I also made a list of like the qualities I do not want to have in a man, the qualities I desire in a man.
Yeah.
And my sister thought like, that's kind of harsh, nobody's going to measure up to that, but he did. And I think that that's when I put it out in the world, like, I'm going to write it down. This is what I want in a husband. This is what I want, and it's hard when you're a single mom and you're dating and you have kids and you don't want to be shacking up for, life is complicated,
Sure it is.
You're trying to teach your kids these values and you don't, and I think that's kind of where, when we realized, okay, this is a little bit more serious than like we're building a business together and we're man friend and lady friend. It's more, and we've got to be something serious about it. So that's when the big will you marry me question came out, which we didn't talk about marriage at all. But he is everything I think a woman could want in a man. He's strong. He is a leader. He tells me when I'm wrong. He holds me up. He is the mirror that you need. He doesn't just tell me what I want to hear,
Yeah.
So I think I love that as a challenger. That's what he is. I appreciate that in him. Yeah. So
let me ask you though, if you would not have gone through what you did with your first marriage, with that relationship, would you have recognized him for who he is and really know what it is that you wanted? Because it's powerful to write a list, ladies. Listen, write a list of the qualities that you're looking for and don't shy away from that list. Don't compromise.
Right.
Because when you do, it gets you in trouble.
Yeah. And I think probably not, to answer your question, I would not have recognized my therapist when I did see a therapist when I was divorcing. And it actually started before I actually divorced because things were just so bad at home. And she said to me, women in these kinds of domestic situations usually choose another partner that has the same type of behavior because that bad love is what we believe we deserve. And when she said that to me, that's why I wrote the list, because I was like, whoa, Like I need
Like-
to have something that I can have a mirror and say, this is what I do not want in a man. And there were things that happened in the earlier part of our relationship. He was always honoring and respectful, but things that you would just joke about as a couple were, that was a trauma for me. And,
Yep.
I had to have a voice to say that. Like, I know that you and your friends think this is funny. It's not funny to me. Right. Like, and I don't think it's cute because this was a real life occurrence for me. And it's when you guys do that, like, and so I was able to give him the shield to protect me. And that is where I had to value myself and say, this is what I need. And when I gave someone else, when someone loves you, they will be that for you. And I do believe that that's the most beautiful thing that comes out of someone who loves you to your soul, is that they will stand up because I didn't know, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. And it never happens again,
And what you're saying there is you have safety in being able to express whatever it is that you're feeling without feeling judged or condemned, which is not what you came from. And most women don't want to upset the apple cart, so to speak. They just want to think that whatever somebody says is cute because they like him and they don't want to him away. That's not honoring yourself.
It's not.
So I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, you do have to be honoring of yourself. That was a learned thing for me.
Sure.
And I've been there where I had to be on time because I didn't want my ex-husband to think that I was doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. Well, that's because he was doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. But I got condemned if I was 2 minutes late, right? I was up to no good. And
Right.
So I hid stuff and it was crazy. I was living crazy just because of this other person that had all these things going on. So it does become like, this is what I need to heal. And eventually you do find yourself healed. It's amazing that sometimes I can talk about things without crying anymore, because I used to cry at the drop of a hat, like, and now it is so freeing when you can just be okay with, wow, that's a scar of mine and I wear it really well. Now I understand there's tremendous purpose in it. Right. I used to hide the scar, like put cocoa butter on it, kind of like the stretch marks we all get as moms, right? We do all these things to hide it. And it's like, oh my God, those are beautiful. And we are so deserving of having had those, but we cover them up all the time. And it's such a thing for even those internal scars that we wear.
And the scar thing, and I've got to share with you, someone had shared this with me before with scars, what scars stands for. The S is for surrender, the C is for confession, the A is accountability, the R is responsibility, and the S is for sharing. And it's really equivalent to what you can find in James 5:16. But it's the matter that our scars do have a purpose. You have found healing, but you have to be intentional.
Right.
If you're not, someone said to me one time, and I really could have punched him in the throat. I'm not that violent person, but I could have. I'm just telling you right now. But they said to me when I was complaining and I was in a very dark place, they said, you are 100% responsible for where you are in life.
Yeah. And that's so true. Yeah. Because I was responsible for staying in that marriage as long as I did. I can't blame my ex-husband entirely. This isn't poor, pitiful Michele, because I had responsibility in that. There was a part I played or didn't play that is now a part of my story. But it's two people. It took two people to make that relationship a mess.
That's right.
And I think now we've probably both come out of the other side as better people, but I'm not friends with him. I don't know if we ever can be. There's so much pain there. We've done a great job of co-parenting and our children are adults now. So it's kind of like married, weddings and babies, grandbabies, like that's what I'll have to deal with. But for the most, there's just too much. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with there being too much pain there that I have to respect the boundary. Can I see him at high school graduation? Absolutely. We can be grown-ups and cordial to each other. Could I be friends with him? Absolutely not. I just can't.
Well, and that's a safe boundary. I mean, you can still forgive somebody. They don't have to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
The forgiving is a gift to yourself,
Yeah.
not the other person, so that you're not trapped in a prison.
True. And I will
And
always be grateful to the father he is to my children. He's always been a great father. He
Very
became
good.
a better father when we got divorced, because we always shared everything 50-50.
Mhm.
And, you know, I would never take that away from him. I am blessed to have someone who wanted to be involved with their kids' lives. And, you
Sure.
know, divorce usually doesn't end that way for the children, but
Mhm.
he did his fair share of everything he needed to do to get our kids to adults. And
Yeah.
I hate the pain that my children had to endure. I think that will forever, that's where, you know, we pass these things down. You know, if we don't pay attention to that, like that breaks my heart, because if we don't pay attention to those signs, like it's not just me that has to live with the pain of that bad love or accepting or being dishonoring of myself. My children are going to have to live with that forever. You know, they're always going to be uncomfortable when mom and dad are in the same room. And I don't want that for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, if you can somehow find the courage to just be true to who you are, who you were created to be. I mean, if there's something off, it's not, it's not intended to be that way. It's just not. And if there's anything in your gut or in your heart, and that's where I can say, like, it was when my ex started killing my soul that I said I want a divorce, because I knew, like, there was something in me that said, you've been waiting for this to get better, and it never gets better.
Yeah. There was something really powerful that I've actually shared at weddings that I've facilitated. And it was something that my aunt shared with me, who has been married for, I guess, 65 years now, but this was at their 60th wedding anniversary. And she's also my favorite aunt. Shout out to Aunt Patty. So I asked her, I said, Aunt Patty, I said, what is your advice for somebody who is newly married? And I'll never forget this, because I think it's just so profound and just so wise. And she is this beautiful, gentle, quiet spirit that I will never be. Anyway, she said that the reason that they have been able to stay together for 60 plus years is because she never tried to change him, but he allowed her to change. I mean, that's a drop all the mics moment.
Yeah.
And if you sit and you think about that, don't, because you said it in the very beginning of this interview that I thought I could change him. And
Yeah.
don't all of us think that? We're like,
Yeah.
I mean more to him than any of these other chicks. So I know he's going to change for me. I can make this happen. I'm going to prove you all wrong.
You know, and
And
I
that's
used to be
foolish.
afraid to admit that. I used, and you know, probably 10, maybe 15 years ago, I would have never shared, like, oh, I said I could change him. But someone asked me one day, like, well, if the warning signs were there at the beginning, I was like, truth is, I thought I could change him. Like,
Yep.
I really did. I really did. And you have all those friends that are like, you know, a tiger doesn't lose its stripes. And I heard all the sayings, all the things. And I just kind of thought, like, no, this is going to be different. I'm prettier,
Exactly.
I'm smarter, right? Now I'm having his baby, right? It was all like, nothing worked. If anything, it got worse. It just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's amazing to me now, the kind of love, if you would have told me then the kind of love that I experience now, I wasted so much time. You know, I did not know that love like I experience today could exist. I mean, my first marriage is the reason I came to Christ in 2005, because I was just so beaten down, and I still stay married to him for 6 years. But that is where I find Christ. And I used to say to him, the Bible says, if you love me, you'll love me like Jesus loved the church. It doesn't match. But I stayed married for 6 years. It doesn't match, right?
Was he a believer?
Oh, he came to church because I went to church and that was going to save my marriage. You know, like, no,
Yeah.
I don't know where he stands in his faith at this point. And, but I did. And that healed me at the time. And, I kept growing and growing and growing. And,
so that was a big piece, I would say, probably, other than your child, that was probably the biggest thing that you got out of that marriage.
yeah.
because it drove you
Absolutely.
to your knees. And a
It-
friend of mine said he takes you from the guttermost to the uttermost.
Mhm.
So it's not until you're down that you realize you need to look up instead of out or in.
Yeah. I was at the point in 2005 where I thought, I'm not going to change him. And, it was bad. And I went to my cousin and she led me spiritually. And she's like, you just need to come to church. You need to find Jesus. Jesus is your only Prince Charming. That's what she said to me. Jesus is your only Prince Charming. And I was like, well, if that's true, I need to get to church this Sunday. And I did. I started going to church that Sunday. And it was interesting because then I would always fight with my ex and like, these two don't match. And when a pastor married me and Tim, I didn't ask to see the vows because I was so like nervous about getting married again. I had complete anxiety over it, but it felt right. And I was like, the vows will be confirmation for me. And out of his mouth came, Tim, do you promise to love Michele like Jesus loves the church? And I was just like, stop. Like, did you just really say that? I mean, right there in the middle of our private little ceremony. I looked at him and I was like, and I just started bawling because it was complete confirmation that this is the man that was handpicked for me. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I know that we spent a whole lot of time talking about all the stuff that led up to where you are now. And since this is a rags to riches, let's leave the rags behind us now.
They're gone.
Right? They're gone. We know that the love is a big piece of this, but now we're talking riches. And so you're rich in many, many things. I'm not just talking financially. Your life is rich in so many ways, but what you do with that, which is one of the main reasons I really wanted to have you on here, is just a beautiful expression of love to the community.
Because love shows up.
There you go. That mantra of yours, love shows
there
up.
It is.
So I want you to tell us where that inspiration came from. You and Tim are now running and it wasn't always easy, but you're now running a very successful real estate company. And what's the name of it?
Compass Home Group.
And what do you call the people that follow you?
Big mouths.
Yeah.
So
I'm a big mouth.
You are a big mouth. We love you for that. You are a raving fan. We started super small. And I mean, last year we sold over 200 houses, $70 million in business. And from the success standpoint, that's really good because I am, I had a little bit of workaholic in me when I was in the rags because that was how I coped. And I'm out of that now, right? So just creating work-life balance. I think real estate, I think everybody should consider real estate in some sort of way because I mean, it can be life-changing, whether you have a career in real estate or you buy investment properties or you're just renting and you need to get into home ownership because that's the way we create wealth. I mean, it always wins. And I think that ultimately it's what won for me. So I know that people just giving like, yes, you had these cards dealt to you and life was hard. When you put your head down and you decide I'm not going to fail, that's where life changes. And honestly, my larger goal, I was the kid, we talked about that went to the firehouse and got coats. So I want to collect toys and food and coats for kids every holiday, not holidays, book bags in August. I want to help. I want to do that because that was my story. A big mission of mine that I haven't started yet is like, I couldn't go to prom because I couldn't afford a prom dress. And I know locally we have those challenges and I want to collect all these old prom dresses that kids are never going to wear anymore and just make a market for, if you need a prom dress, just come get one. Like, wow. There's so much in me to give back because I know how I felt in my youth.
You were that kid.
Yeah. And I do believe from all of everything I've learned on my journey to just be honoring of myself, it is such a blessing to be a blessing to other people. And when we give, we always get it back tenfold. I'll cry a little bit because this story is hard for me. But when I lost my house in real estate, I was a realtor and I left the marital home and my ex was living in the house and he wasn't paying the mortgage, and it was this long story. And that was the time when short sales were a big deal. So we tried to short sale it. It didn't work. And I was like, this house is going to go to foreclosure, right? I had to, number one, own that. And number two, I had to get real with myself. I was $40,000 in debt. I'm on the verge of losing my house. And I pleaded with God to not ruin my life. And I pleaded so bad that I hated him for a little bit. I went on this, like, I'm mad at you, like you ruined my life. And when I finally came back to my senses and asked him to restore me, he did. He's like, you get to work, you do my work, we'll do your work, and we're in this together. When I got in the boat with him, I mean, I have 7 houses now. I mean, whatever he took from me, he gave me tenfold. I mean, not only do I have my own business and the things that I've rebuilt, I thought he was just taking things away from me, but as I look at all of it work, he has just given me so much back. And I was like, it's true. Whatever he takes from you, if you trust him, he will give it back to you tenfold. And he has given me, he took a crappy husband away from me that I thought, I don't believe in divorce, and that, it's just not healthy. It's not good. And he gave me this prince of a man. He took away my house and he gave me houses, like plural.
But he only did that because you were a good steward of what he had already given you. So, he's not going to bless you with 7 homes if you're not good and responsible with 1 or 2.
I think that's the key component, is you do have to step into the ownership of it.
Yeah.
Right. I had to get really clear about where I was, what was going wrong, what's going right. Why is, it's not why is this happening to me? It's why is this happening for me? A little bit of a different kind of question, to look at it a little bit differently.
And what can you learn from it? Right. Because a lot of times, because I've been angry at God too. I mean, we've had words, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't back down, and he doesn't shy away from it. He already knows what I'm going to say before I even say it. And he just I can picture him with his hand on his hip, just looking down at me like, you didn't have to go for 40 years in the wilderness, my darling daughter.
Yeah. I always think of that.
Learn through that, right?
Yeah.
There is no breakthrough. You have to go through.
Yeah. And it's so true. We think that we can just kind of like scoot around it or jump over it, and we can't. We just have to get really like, this stings. I hate being here, but I'm going to sit here. I'm going to let it sting. I'm going to sit in alcohol. Like, it's going to sting. It's going to burn. I'm going to go through the fire, and then I'm going to be better for it. Yeah. And you do come out so refined. It's just that you can't see it. You can't feel it, see it, touch it. You can't do anything with it until you go through it. And it's just knowing. It's knowing, like, it's not matching. It's not supposed to be like this. It doesn't match. There's more. And I think when you stay true to that, when I started paying attention to that, I was kind of like, all right, no, I'm not settling for this. Yeah. I mean, I walked around my entire life, and sometimes I still do this. My expectations are too high. No one can live up to that. Like, that's too much. Do I expect too much of them? It's a really great coach and really good mentors and people in our lives that are the ones that are like, well, why do you think your expectations are too high?
Yeah. Who told you that?
Yeah. Who told you?
Where'd you learn that?
Yeah. You picked that up from somewhere. So I think that I just have these super high expectations because that's what everybody tells me. Gosh, you have such high expectations, Michelle. My parents have coined me. They call me a hard nose. They have called me a hard nose all my life because I'm strict. I'm very responsible, and I'm like,
how about instead of strict, committed?
Right?
Right? You're committed to something.
Yeah. But we pick up we say these things to people that we don't realize somehow
the impact
of it. And it was when I could say, like, you know what? I am a hard nose. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with like being like, no.
Yeah. No is a complete sentence.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. Yeah.
So there's something else too. I mean, we're talking about the richest story now, but there's something else that you guys do there, or at least that I remember, on Fridays. Standing out.
Good Friday.
Standing outside. So explain that to us. What is it that you do?
So we stand outside on Friday mornings in the summer because, we don't want to disrupt the neighbors too bad. from 8:30 to 9:30 with signs of positivity, and the community loves it. It's, the first year we did it, people thought we were like soliciting for a presidential candidate, or it was like somebody like, but we're like, no. And it was during COVID that this was birthed. So everyone was just sad. And I was like, what can we do to bring life to the community? And we are life giving, right? So we came up with, our church did this one day, and I came to church one day and had a sign that's like, you look beautiful today. And I was like, we're going to do this. We're going to make signs, and we're going to sit out front and do this. The whole team was on board, and the community loved it. And now we have a couple special editions, Halloween and Christmas. So on Christmas we dress up as Santa and elves, but it's just signs that say, you are beautiful, you are loved, you're enough. I think during COVID, we had one that said, smile with your eyes. Like,
Yeah.
when we were all wearing masks. And it's just a little bit, some people go out of their way just to drive by because they love the feeling of it when they drive by.
Sure.
And now
It's an encouragement. It's a light, it's a bold light on the hill.
Oh my God, we still get people complaining sometimes about the honking. We've had somebody yell at us one time about impeding the flow of traffic. But I am like really big on hope. We talked about that. So I will rally my team and say, we're not stopping for one person. Keep cheering. Like, so it's, it's kind of like, and they wanted to stop because one person yelled about impeding the flow of traffic. There are 10 people out there, and there were hundreds of people that were beeping and high-fiving and thumbs up and all these things. But that one person that said, you're impeding the flow of traffic, it killed all of them.
And you know what that speaks to, and I'm sure that you have heard it, and probably even the listening audience, but somebody tells you 20 things that are fantastic about yourself. They tell you one thing that's not. What do you remember?
Yeah, it's very true.
The one thing. So
I had to really nail my affirmations down when I was going through a hard time. So even Tim will tell you, Michele is really great at her affirmations. I will say them in the mirror. I will say, I am great. I am worthy. I am valued. I am loved. If I'm feeling really anxious, I will breathe deep and just say, I am safe. Like, I am safe. There is nothing around me that's going to harm me. God, God's grace won't take me where his will won't protect me. Like, there are all these things that I just have built into my life where it's just, there are times where I'm scared. I'm still scared, and life is hard. People aren't going to just let me do what I want.
Right.
They're going to tell me I'm impeding their flow of traffic, and I'm going to be like, well, it's okay. Have a great day. Like,
so something that you said there is really powerful. And I think it's important for anybody. I don't care where you are in your walk of life. And that is to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and affirm yourself, affirm your worth, affirm your value, affirm your safety, like you said, and to get in the habit of doing that. A lot of people think it's really kooky to stand in front of the mirror and talk to yourself. Tell yourself you love yourself.
Yeah.
Honor your temple.
It's been life-changing for me. I learned it in sales because we did a lot of sales training that way. But when I needed it the most, I would put Post-its on the mirror. Until I could say it, I would read it. And then now I don't even need them anymore. I will look at myself in the mirror and say, Michele, you look great today. If I'm feeling fat, whatever, I ate too much Thanksgiving dinner, like anything that happens, you're looking great today, and
it's not in a vanity sense. It's in an affirmation.
Yeah.
And there's a complete difference, we're not talking about being arrogant and being all about you. No, this is honoring who you are and whose you are.
It's very true.
By doing that, to remind yourself,
yeah,
especially in the hard times, especially when you're afraid, because fear is the opposite of faith.
Exactly. And there are times where you have to reach out for it. You have to say, if I don't see it, what does he see? He sees beauty. He sees brains. He sees you are capable. He sees that he's given you a mountain to climb, and you like, he wouldn't call you if he wouldn't equip you. You're equipped.
Move that mountain.
Yeah, go climb, do it. So until you can see it, touch it, feel it yourself, just what would he say to you?
Yeah.
Oh, he that's so good. You're ugly. He wouldn't say you're not worthy. He would say, I love you. You're capable. you're so worthy. You're my child. Like those are the things he would say.
Cherished, treasured. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh. Fearfully and wonderfully made. Everybody pretty much knows that scripture, Psalm 139, and he knows every single one of your days before one of them came to be.
Yeah.
So
He knew
there
you
is
were going to have this
nothing.
whole thought.
Yeah. There's nothing that surprises him, right? Sometimes we're like, oh yeah, I don't know what to pray. I'm not going to say anything.
Oh,
You don't have to.
no.
You say,
Just
Lord,
sit
help me.
still.
That's
He
your
hears all your
prayer.
thoughts. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, at any parting, as we wrap up, are there any parting thoughts, words of encouragement, wisdom, encouragement, anything that you want to share?
I mean,
Rags to riches.
rags to riches. Just you can. Someone pointed at me when my life started to break down and said, you can. And it doesn't matter where you are, you just have to believe that you can. And that might take, if you aren't there yet in your own life, just be that in somebody else's life. Because
Oh, wait a minute. Say that again.
if you aren't there in your own life yet, be that in somebody else's life.
Thank you for
Because how we feel, we sometimes say that to other people, and we very quickly kill our children's dreams. We kill our friends' dreams because we don't realize the negativity that's coming out of our mouths. So I really would just encourage you, like, your words matter. I mean, I am someone who was, emotionally and verbally abused with words, and they matter. It took one person saying, you can do whatever you want, to change my whole life around. And I actually just sent her a text yesterday to say, I'm so grateful for you. I haven't talked to this lady in years, but she was the one person that told me I could. And I think that's how we need to show up for each other in the world.
Yeah, that's good. And I have to show you, this sits on my desk.
Yes, you can. See?
So
You
in the
can.
moments when you're feeling like you can and you're down, and put some music on and dance. I don't know,
You can.
do the
Yeah,
Duggan,
I always
whatever
say,
it
get a
takes.
cup of coffee, put your hair in a pony, and get to work.
Well,
Like, you can,
have you seen my
right?
hair? Am I going to put a ponytail on my hair?
Well, that's for me. That's for me.
I'd be like, what is it, Bambi with the little stick up there?
You can.
You can.
It's been
That's
so fun
beautiful.
hanging out with you for a minute and telling my
Yeah,
story. I
thank
appreciate the
you.
opportunity. I do.
This was wonderful. And I know that your story is going to impact countless lives.
Well,
I mean, people that we don't even know, and you may not even recognize until we're on the other side of glory, that will
Wow.
say, I listened to you and you encouraged me.
any of your
So
listeners that need follow-up, I'm happy to chat with anybody.
that would be beautiful. And if you're in the Harford County area, now you're not just specific to Harford County, are you?
No.
Let's talk about Compass Home Group. What areas do you serve? Put a little plug in there, a commercial.
We serve Hartford, Baltimore, Cecil, and Anne Arundel, parts of Carroll. So it just depends on the radius there. We don't want to get too far because of service, but we're pretty widespread. And that's our mission. We're actually looking forward to some expansion to the Delaware beaches in Pennsylvania. So
nice.
we're doing that. So yeah, if you have a real estate need, we're ready to help you.
And what is your tagline?
Compass Home Group, have fun, share love, and build community through real estate.
There you go.
That's that love showing up part.
That's it. That's it. And how do they reach Compass Home Group?
Compass Home Group is compasshomegroup.com. That's all our handles on Facebook, Instagram, and our phone number is 443-360-0086.
All right. I'm glad you knew your number. Most of us
Yeah,
don't know the
I
number.
do. I know my number. And my personal handles are just my name with one L, Michele Langhauser.
Okay.
All Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, if anybody needs to chat afterwards.
Very good. All right. Thanks again, Michele. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have you back. Maybe we'll have Tim back at some point so he can tell us the real story,
Yeah. I don't have time to deal with her ridiculousness today.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Michele.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.